Welcome to the NSS webinar series. My name is Deborah Heyer, and I am the NSS Education Division Chief. If you are new to this series or new to the NSS, we are a volunteer 501c3 that is organization dedicated to science, conservation, education, and of caves and karst. And today we have a very, very special guest. We have Colin Strickland, which makes me very happy because Colin is from Texas, which is where I started caving. One of my first expeditions is with his father. So Colin is a second generation caver, am I correct?
Yep.
And he works at the Austin McCollum's Canyonland Preserves as their cave biologist. So Colin has a master's in geography and a bachelor's in biology. And I'm really excited to see all the different cave organisms he's going to present to us tonight.
I work for City of Austin, Balcones Canyonland Preserve. The Balcones Canyonland Preserve is actually made up of multiple entities. Travis County has a large portion of the land as well, but we also have other partners such as the Nature Conservancy, the Lower Colorado River Authority, Travis County Autobond, and altogether we've got over 30,000 acres of land set aside in western Travis County to protect endangered songbirds like the golden-cheeked warbler and the black-capped vireo, which everyone knows about, but also a lot of endangered and rare karst invertebrates, which most people have never heard of. So part of my goal is to get people to realize all the cool critters we have here in Central Texas that they've never heard of, but that are very special and need to be protected. So I'm going to go ahead and start showing you, kind of starting at the entrance and moving my way farther into the cave, what you would find in our kind of small, most of our caves are kind of small around here, but they're still really cool. There we go. So one of the first things you'll notice when you come upon a cave in Central Texas is that you'll start to see different plant life that you don't normally see in hot, arid Texas. You'll end up with ferns and moss and everything, plants that like to have all that moisture, which we're lacking most of the year in Texas. As you move your way farther down into the caves, you'll start to find organisms that normally would have a hard time on the hot surface, but they do just fine down here in the caves. So here's just the standard little snail, which you'll only see them on the surface if it's raining, but down inside the entrance of the cave, it's 100% humidity, so they're just cruising about, having a good time. So this first group is called the Troglophiles. So from the Greek troglos for cave and phileo for love, the Troglophiles are the cave lovers. So these are organisms that don't necessarily need to live in a cave, but they really like the environment of the cave. So you'll find a lot of them hanging out in there. So here's a Gulf Coast toad. We find those just all right. Can you hear me now? I think so. This slug, it was August and it hadn't rained in a month, but he was doing just fine down in this cave. And then we have these really cool western slimy salamanders, which on the surface they have to hide under rocks and everything, but down in the caves they can just cruise around. These western slimy salamanders can get up to around 6 inches long or so. I got this. I had never really seen one eating before, and when I first picked up this rock, this guy was really annoyed. But then, after a little while, he realized, hey, I can actively hunt now in the light, and he started hunting the springtails and mites and little cave cricket nymphs. So you can see little like springtails crawling around, and here is this like very foolish cricket nymph that basically just crawls into his mouth. I always wondered how these guys hunt in the dark, because you find them way back inside the caves. And it may be that things just like walk into their face and they suck them up real quick sometimes. Hard to say. He spots this little springtail and he gets ready to grab him. But the springtail's too sly and he sneaks right under his chin. But there's this little mite in the foreground you can barely see. He's not so lucky. He gets the tongue. I've never seen him do that before, so pretty cool stuff. The next group that I'm going to tell you all about are the troglozines. So from the Greek troglos for cave and xenos for guest, the troglozines are the part-time cave dwellers. So these organisms are super important for bringing nutrients into the cave ecosystem. Caves are super nutrient deficient because due to the lack of sunlight, the only way that they get really any nutrients is things fall in the caves, they get washed in the caves, or they get brought in by troglozines. So the one that most people think of are bats. And we have other species of bats, but most of our small Central Texas caves, we generally find these tricolored bats, anywhere from 1 or 2 of them up to like 25 or so usually. Another organism that occur in large numbers in caves and come in and out each night are these Leobunninum townsendii, daddy longlegs we call them. There can be thousands and thousands of these guys just inside the entrance. You kind of have to like hang out and let them all move because there's no way to like move around without squishing a bunch of them, which is sad. A really adorable troglozine are these cliff chirping frogs. So these guys, they exit the cave at night, harvest food in the forest, and then come back before dawn. They're really good at climbing up vertical walls and everything. And then they like to get in little alcoves, which amplifies their calls so they can find mates and everything. So we have a lot of mammals that utilize the caves. My coworker, Drew Thompson, set up a game camera at this cave in South Austin for about a week. And I edited together what we saw on those videos. So you got your standard raccoons, you got a possum, you got a nice little porcupine, but yeah, these critters are real wary when they're coming and going, because with so much animal traffic at the cave entrance basically smells like mammals. And so that draws in a lot of predators. So here you can see a little fox coming to check it out. You got some coyotes. And even a bobcat, like right in the middle of South Austin. There's like neighborhoods all around this area, but this guy still makes his way through. These ringtails, they're pretty shy. We don't see them very often, but occasionally we run into them. And I had this game, and you can see here this guy is hunting cave crickets that were trying to exit the cave. Unfortunately for him, the cave cricket jumped down the pit, but we'll see that in slow motion again. I've got like multiple game cameras set up around caves trying to get more footage of these guys. Both the ringtails and the foxes will sit around the entrance of the cave and pounce on the cave crickets and eat them while they're exiting. So all these mammals coming in and out of the caves provide very useful nutrients for the cave. On the left here, you got some scat from either a ringtail or a raccoon, and you can see it's sprouted a bunch of seeds and acorns, and that provides good nutrients. And then on the right is porcupine scat, and it always seems to have this white fungus with these cool little spindly mushrooms. But due to the size of our caves, we don't generally have really large bat colonies. That's more of an exception. So the most important troglazine in central Texas is the Texas cave cricket, Ceuthophilus secretus. So these guys in the summertime can be amassed in the thousands in certain caves. And so all of these provide food for troglazines or troglobites that can catch them. Usually they're babies, but sometimes the adults can get taken. But also underneath these roosts on the ceiling, they're basically raining nutrient-rich guano down onto the floor, which then provides food for other organisms. So you can see everybody loves tasty crickets. On the left here, I got, that's an eyeless Cicarina spider. It's caught this juvenile cricket and it's feeding on him. And on the right, we got a Texas cave scorpion, and he's ripped the entire leg off of an adult cricket and he's just going to town on it like a drumstick. And here, this Plethodon salamander is trying to swallow a cricket whole, but actually after I took this picture, he thought I was trying to eat him and he regurgitated the entire cricket and ran away. So I felt kind of bad about that, but it was for science. And another organism that's very important to cave ecosystems that relies heavily on cricket guano are these tiny springtails, Pseudoscorpion violenta. So this is Stovepipe Cave, and it's one of our most diverse caves in Travis County. The entire floor is covered in cricket guano, which provides nutrients for fungus and bacteria, which is then eaten by these springtails as well as mites and other organisms. So these springtails are perfect food for cave spiders and pseudoscorpions. And so they form kind of like the base of the food chain. And there's thousands of them just crawling around everywhere inside this cave. You feel bad going in there to survey. Some other ones that benefit from all the guano are these Campbellus phoebia, these cave millipedes, and Helicodiscus. You can see here there's some little mites cruising around. This is Campbellus phoebia. He's just tunneling his way through this fungus-covered cricket guano. These guys, they're blind, but they have some sort of light sensors, because when you shine a light on them, they'll curl up in a ball. But then after about a minute, they'll uncurl. So these Helicodiscus cave snails, they still have eyes, but they're no longer functional. But their tentacles, their 4 tentacles, are chemosensors, so they can both smell and taste the environment around them. And then when you get deep enough into the cave, you'll find the Troglobites, which are my favorite group. This here is a Tartarocoragrus pseudoscorpion. So from the Greek troglos for cave and bio for life, the Troglobites spend their entire lives in caves and cannot survive on the surface. So this is a Texella mulaiki. It's a troglobitic harvestman. It's only found in southern Travis County and northern Hays County. It only lives deep down in the cave, where the temperatures remain stable near 70 degrees approximately, and the humidity is almost 100% year-round. We don't know very much about their diet or behavior or anything, so lots more to be learned. But as you'll see in a minute, they're pretty small. So here's my coworker, Drew Thompson. He's got one of those Texella muliki on his finger there. So due to their nutrient-limited environment, troglobites tend to be small, have slower metabolisms, longer lifespans, and lay fewer eggs than surface relatives. Other adaptations to life underground include loss of eyes and pigmentation, longer legs and antennae, enhanced tactile, vibratory, and olfactory senses. So this is a Spiodesmus millipede. You'll see a lot of these. I have SPP in there indicating that there's multiple species. So due to the faulting and displacement along the Balcones escarpment in central Texas, we have a lot of isolated islands of karst. And so the ancestors of these species speciated into a bunch of closely related species over a small geographic area. A good example of that is these Tartarocregus pseudoscorpions. In Travis County alone, we have 7 species of these, and some of their ranges are basically 1 square mile. So driving from North Austin to South Austin, you cross through 7 different ranges of these species, which makes them very susceptible to local extinction. These guys don't have any eyes, so their bodies are covered in sensory hairs, and the hairs are concentrated on their large arms and pincers. And they basically just wander around until they bump into something and grab it. These Cicarina spiders are eyeless, and they're probably the most abundant predator we find in the caves. Pretty much every rock you flip will have one of these under it. They feed on springtails and cave crickets. I've seen one eat a millipede. You can see the nice fangs on that guy. So this one is a male. You can tell by his enlarged pedipalps that look like little boxing gloves. And you can see where normally there would be a bunch of eyes on his head. It's just smooth with some sensory hairs on there. This is Rhydini austinica. It is searching around this is Get Down Cave in South Austin. It's looking for cave cricket eggs, which are laid in sand or soil floors, and its head and neck are elongated, so it's better able to pull the eggs out of the holes that they're oviposited into. This is a Tachinetta spider, and these are incredibly small. They're called pygmy spiders. Their body length is about 1.5 millimeters, and basically their body is translucent. You can see that when the light reflects off their legs, it glows this kind of neon blue, and that makes it really easy to distinguish them from just juveniles from other spiders. But you can look with a hand lens and you can see the light reflecting. This is a Texoredelia cave silverfish. These guys have really long antennae, but you can see one of the antennas got nipped off, probably by a cave scorpion. But they spend a lot of time cleaning their antenna, since that's pretty much the only way they sense their environment. So this one is specifically Texoredelia texensis, which is one of my favorite species names to say. Try to say that 5 times fast. These guys are very mobile. They're always cruising around. So I have this video up on my YouTube channel, but I went ahead and threw the whole thing in here because it's just a pretty amazing interaction. You almost never see Troglobites interacting this way. But here, so you can see he uses the sensory hairs on body and limbs to sense its environment. The sensory hairs brushed up against the spider before it ran off, so it knows something is close. It slowly waves its pedipalps around, probing for its prey. With its abdomen in the grasp of the pseudoscorpion's pincer, there is little chance of escape. There are venom glands in the tips of the pincers. The pincer has punctured the abdomen and injected venom. A small drop of liquid can be seen forming on the spider's abdomen. It is either hemolymph, spider blood, or venom. Now the spider basically paralyzed, and pseudoscorpion can feast on it. So if you're lucky enough to go far enough in a cave where you find running water, you'll get to see the next group of organisms, the Stygobites. From the Greek, stygo for Styx and bio for life. In Greek mythology, the river Styx was the boundary to the underworld. This is a cave stream up at the Balcones Canyonlands National Wildlife Refuge up in northwestern Travis County. It's inhabited by Cicadodia isopods as well as Stygobromus amphipods. You can see here that the isopods are feeding on this cave cricket that fell in the water. Here's a drowned bark scorpion. Both the amphipods and the isopods are feeding on it. So the Stygobromus amphipods, they look kind of like a shrimp. They're flattened side to side and they kind of swim on their side, where the isopods are flattened top to bottom and they crawl around more than swim. Another strange organism you find in these cave streams are these Philoplana mori. These stygobitic flatworms are pretty strange looking. One thing that's interesting is the salamanders don't seem to eat them. They probably have some sort of chemical defense or just taste really nasty. Here's a Jollyville Plateau salamander. This one is in Testudo Tube Cave. So these guys, they live in springs and spring runs on the surface, but also there's populations that live pretty much exclusively in cave streams. There's a lot of these in North Austin in the Buttercup area, multiple cave stream caves that are interconnected. And then there's a few other species that I'll tell y'all about. So this is the Texas cave scorpion. These guys aren't as aggressive as like a standard bark scorpion. I've never been stung by one, and I've seen a lot of them. They like to hang out under rocks and everything, waiting for prey. But also, if you're doing like a cricket count, they'll hang out in all the little cracks and nooks around the entrance, and then as the crickets are trying to exit, they'll reach out and grab them. This is Ceuthophilus cunicularis. It's a species of cave cricket that, unlike the other ones that are troglophiles, this one seems more troglobitic. I mean, it obviously has eyes still, but we rarely see these exit the cave. They seem to always be on the inside the caves. And the other cricket species normally roost on the ceiling, where these ones hang out on the floor most of the time. This is Ceuthophilus species B, which is an undescribed species of cave cricket. So you can see the difference between Ceuthophilus secretus on the right and Ceuthophilus species B on the left. Secretus has this very defined pattern on its back, where species B doesn't. And species B has kind of a peach fuzz look on the end of its abdomen. So Ceuthophilus secretus are adults in the summertime, and they generally are in much larger numbers with hundreds or thousands of them in a cave, where species B, they're adults in the winter, and there's usually, I don't know, a few dozen to maybe a few hundred, but not the large numbers like we get with secretus. If anybody wants something to do, you could describe it and give it a better name. So this had this name forever. Some other cool organisms that you can find in these caves are diplurans. This little guy is from family Camphoviidae. So these guys have these cool antennae that look sort of like a pearl necklace with all these little beads strung together. And then on the other end, they have these sensory circi, I guess to tell if anybody's sneaking up behind them. Another cool dipluran are these gepigids. These guys, instead of having the circi on the end, they have these large pincers which they use to capture prey and hold them. And these guys can get really big. Like when I first started in the city in 2017, in Grassy Cove Cave, we found one of these things that was like 3 inches long, but I didn't know much about cave biology at the time to know that like I should have taken all the video I could and collected it. Because since then, I have not seen another one that big, and I've only seen like a couple inch long ones. But apparently these things can get pretty large. Another cool organism that it's really more of a soil dwelling organism, but we see them in caves a lot. They're the Symphylans. And so they have the antenna that look similar to a dipluran, but they're like a totally different group. Gardeners tend to not like them because some of them chew on the roots of plants and everything. And it's actually funny, on my YouTube channel, my Symphylan video had like more views than any other thing, because I'm pretty sure everyone's Googling about how to kill Symphylans, but then they just go where I say how great they are. So, oh well. But yeah, these guys are cool because lacking eyes, they use their super sensitive antennae to basically just like feel and taste everything around them in their constant search for mates and food. I just think they move in a really cool way. And yeah, if you're looking really closely, you might find these microwhip scorpions, but these things are tiny. They're the order Palpagradi. They have this crazy bottle brush appendage that we're not really sure what it's for. I mean, it seems to be some sort of sensory thing. So these guys are interesting. It was found that some of these eat bacteria, which would make them one of the very few arachnids that doesn't hunt other animals. Another one of my favorites is Triconiscidae. So these are soil-dwelling isopods. So you find these guys usually in very moist, like wet soil under rocks in the caves. So their antennae are not only chemosensory, but also they're basically humidity sensors. And so if it gets too dry, they'll flee. So pretty much as soon as you lift the rock up, you gotta like get your pictures and video real quick, because they're like, it's drying out, and they immediately like go back into their tunnels. So some of them around here have eyes like this one, and then we have some species that don't. I've been talking to Ben Hutchins from Texas State, and he's pretty sure that most of these are undescribed species in Travis County. And so we're going to collect a bunch of them and then do some genetic testing just to see approximately how many species we have. And then maybe someday someone will take on the task of describing them. But I got too many other things on my plate. So for now, they're undescribed. And then these super adorable creatures are the globular springtails. So these things are incredibly tiny with like a 1 millimeter long body length. Now that I know that they're there, I find them all the time. This one is in a pool of water, 1 inch in diameter pool of water. And it's so tiny that it just walks on the surface of the water and doesn't even like put an indentation in it or anything. It basically looks like it's walking on glass. And you can see this one just cruising on the surface of the water with all the calcite rafts and everything. So that's pretty much all I got. Here's a 1 pincered pseudoscorpion for y'all. But if you like this kind of stuff and you want to see more of it, just go to YouTube and search Biosubterranea. I got a bunch of videos on there. I'm hoping to post one about every month or so going forward. So there'll be a lot more to see. I have like a ton of footage, but I'm busy with like a zillion other projects, so I haven't had time to make any videos in a while. But I did just make one of the pseudoscorpion grooming, which I got to check out. It's pretty awesome. But that's about it. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Colin. There's actually a couple of different questions in the chat. So the first one is, are you determining, I think this, I'm trying to remember what species this was. It's like, are you determining their diet by observation or dissection? So I think it was one of the earlier species. It was, Kevin, which species were you talking about?
It was a spider, I think. I forget which spider though.
The Cicarina spiders.
Well, so I guess the question would be the same for any of the things that you're seeing in these caves.
Yeah, mostly so we're doing these faunal surveys of all these caves like biannually. We're going in like, I don't know, 30 different caves, and we have these zones set up, and we like flip every rock in the zone and count everything we see. So as we're doing that, we're like making all these other observations. So over the years, we're like, that one's got a little like millipede in its mouth. That one's got a cricket, like, but now we haven't done any dissections of them yet. They're really tiny. But yeah, it's mostly observational science.
Cool, thanks.
So, and then apparently the Texas cave scorpions are 2 to 4 centimeters long. So thank you, Kara, for posting that. And can you expand more about the pseudoscorpion venom?
I mean, I don't know much about it. I just know that they have like their bottom pincer is like mobile and the top pincer is immobile, and then the venom gland runs through that. So they basically just like stab it in and then grab on with the other one. But I don't know much about the chemical makeup of it or anything. It seems to paralyze them. I mean, the spider stopped moving, but it also could have been because he got like stabbed in the abdomen with a giant pincer. So it's hard to say. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. I was like almost done with that survey. That was like the last rock I went to flip. And then I like turn it, and there's like the pseudoscorpion like a centimeter away from this eyeless Idmanella spider. And I'm like, get the camera out. Maybe it's going to happen. And then it did, which is pretty awesome.
See, I am going to post your YouTube channel in the chat, and it also will be linked to our YouTube channel too. And I have also a link in where you signed up for the registration. Kimberly, do you have a question?
I do, yeah. I am kind of a newer caver, and I'm really excited to like have my vertical kit finally. And I've also been really interested in starting volunteering for survey projects and things like that. And I've noticed that a lot of other projects in caves include like expanding caves. And I was just like or searching for leads, and then maybe like opening leads. And I was wondering, from your perspective, like how does that impact cave bioflora and fauna? I feel like it's kind of like, I'm kind of nervous asking this because I feel like people do it and I haven't had the chance to kind of be like, well, is this actually okay for us to be doing this? And I feel like it might be kind of a taboo question, so I'm sorry. But I've been curious about it.
Yeah, you're asking a Texas caver, and so that's a good person to ask.
I can tell you a lot about this because, so like growing up as a kid, I was, told like, you never change anything in a cave, you never touch anything. But now working at the Balcones Canyon Land Preserve and with local cavers, I've learned something. So, I mean, I don't know how this is everywhere, but at least in Central Texas, our caves were basically systematically filled by ranchers for like 200 years. And so most of our caves were filled in. So like they didn't want their animals to fall down pits. And like if there was water flowing into the ground, they're like, no, we want the water to stay on the surface. So they'd plug it with rocks and clay, and they have a stock pond all of a sudden. And so like all over Central Texas, our caves are like filled in. And so we dig these caves back open and restore them. And so when you first break into these caves, when you first get in there, there's barely anything because it's been like completely sealed. You'll maybe find like a few hardcore troglobites, but like nothing else. But then once you've opened it and it's been open for a while, and you don't want to open it too big. I mean, you can have problems. Like if you make multiple entrances at different heights, you can get airflow going through, it'll dry everything out. But if you open it up and then that allows all these troglazines to enter, you can get a whole bunch more diversity in the caves. So recently up on one of our preserves that we only knew of one cave on, there was this big long crack that was about 8 feet long and 2 feet deep, but it was completely filled with soil. And our contractors, Rich Saria and his crew, they dug through about 12 feet of soil and broke into a room. And then after a little more digging on each side of that room, we got 600 feet of passage in this cave, which is pretty big for Travis County. But when I first got in there, there was like troglobites, but barely any springtails. There was like almost no crickets or anything because they couldn't get in there. But then now about a year's gone by, the entrance room is like covered in cricket guano. There's like thousands of crickets. So the whole floor is covered in springtails and millipedes and everything now. We have bats roosting, hibernating in the entrance room and everything. And when I first got in there were no salamanders, no frogs. And now there's like, when I was in there last winter, there was like 30 giant Plethodon salamanders, like 5 inches long, all hanging out. I was like, what in the heck? So we do a lot of restoring of caves, but you got to be careful because some of these caves are really small. If you like dig a giant entrance on a really small cave and you dry it out, it's going to be no good. But a lot of times you need to restore it. And also just like pushing farther passages in caves, like a lot of that is just so that we can get in there and see what's in there. Because like the organisms don't really care if the hole's like this big around or this big around. They're going to go through it. But if we can't get in there and see what's in there, then we won't know to protect it. Like a good example is like in South Austin, there was this lacrosse cave, and it was like filled in by ranchers. It was like a big trash dump. So the Texas cavers like pulled all this ranch trash out, like wire and barrels and like jugs and stuff. And then the watershed protection cave team wanted to turn it into an education cave. So when they first started, it was like basically filled to the ceiling with soil. My coworker went in there, did a faunal survey, but he barely found anything because it was just too dry and shallow. But then after the cave team dug on it, they were able to break into a lower level. And then I went down into the bottom where it's like super humid and found multiple species of concern that they didn't even know were on their property. And you wouldn't know that it was there unless you dug down deep enough to see that it was actually there. So, yeah. I'll have to get my coworker Drew on a cave restoration thing, because he'll go on and on about this forever.
I would love to have Drew come on and do a whole presentation on cave restoration. Thank you for that. I'm going to read what Kara wrote because I think this is pertinent to everyone. She said, excavation for cave life, such a great story. Also, we have a lot of gated caves in Texas, most of which include a mammal access portal, which can really make a difference. So why I wanted to share that is because she was talking about when you're considering access to all organisms and doing studies and looking at what kind of what Colin showed us with the game cams. And see, Rich says, great set of photos, and the videos of cave life in action were amazing to watch. Nicely done, Colin. Educational indeed. Brings about an awesome awareness of the diversity of caves. Makes me wonder what I might have unknowingly stepped on over the years. I feel the same way.
Yeah, as I'm going through the cave, I'm constantly just like, shooing everything away from me. But it's hard when you're doing like stovepipe cave. We only go in there like twice a year. Because like there's no way to move in that cave without squishing a bunch of mites and springtails. It's like the entire floor is covered in thousands of them. And so we do our best.
Does anyone have any other questions for Colin? Well, thank you, Colin, for joining us. As I said, this video will be on our YouTube channel. We'll link to your YouTube channel, Colin. I greatly appreciate you being a guest, and I'd love to see more videos. So keep on posting them and let me know.
There'll be more. Cool. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.